As you guys might notice, I am currently sick with a cold, so I'm going to sound a little funny, but I really want to make a video, so I'm going to give this a shot. I just got a box of goodies from a friend of mine in Germany this morning. I have this Asus motherboard. It's an entry-level socket AM3 board, which I'm planning on using to upgrade my secondary workshop computer using leftover parts. So I'll have a video about this. I can tell this is a little bit older than most of the other boards I've worked with on this platform because it still has a lot of electrolytics on it. And in fact, they're the Chemicon KZG, which they've had some bad runs of those and they're notoriously defective, but these appear to be okay, so hopefully they're going to be alright in the course of time that I need to use this motherboard. But I suppose even if they're not, I'll just do a repair video on it. I don't know if I've had any actual motherboard capacitor replacement videos or not. Probably not very in-depth anyway. But I'll definitely have more about this shortly. A couple other things that were in the box. There was a D-Link DIR615 wireless router. I plan on putting this to use as an access point. It'd be a nice upgrade from my cheap little wireless G router that I've been using for years. And another one of my favorite items is a couple boxes of chocolate, straight out of Germany. I can't wait to dig into these. In fact, this one, everything on the back is written in German. I need to learn German so I can read this stuff. I have a hard enough time with my own native language, let alone learning another one. So I'm one of those people that has the ability to do certain things, you know, and pick up on it, but then other things, I'm just a complete idiot when it comes to learning. And, you know, obviously electronics was one of the things I had a knack for, but other things, not so much. But anyway, let me gather up some more parts and we'll do a system build with this motherboard. For the system build on this board, I've scrounged up some of my existing parts, and a couple of them actually came out of my friend's big monster 2011 Core i7 gaming rig that we had built, and I had a video about it. That was the one with the really big Corsair case and the Core i7 950. This is the GeForce GTX 570 card that was in that system, and it's only got 1.28 gigs of RAM. Why do I get the urge to make a Back to the Future reference when I say that number? But this card still works good, so I'll be using that. And I have the RAM kit that was also in that Core i7 950 rig. This is a 12 gig triple channel kit, but I'll just be using 2 of the chips, which will give me 8 gigs for the system, more than enough. And for the processor, this is my old Phenom 2 X4 955 I've had for quite a number of years. This was in my main rig for quite a while, and then my sister used it for a few years, and then when she upgraded to a 6-core, this chip ended up back on my shelf again. So it's going to have a new home on this motherboard and hopefully be a nice stable platform. For the CPU cooler, I didn't want to use the stock cooler because they're just too noisy, so I've got a Cooler Master Hyper TX3, brand new in the package. This is the smaller brother to the Hyper 212 Plus that I've used many times. I wasn't sure if the 212 Plus would be too tall for this little case, so I decided to get the TX3 just in case I needed it. It was only like $18 anyway, so I figured what the heck, why not? If you're not aware of which case this is, it is a compact Presario S5100NX. Really nice solid case. There's a couple things I don't care for in it, mainly the drive mounts that require you to pull the drives out the front, which involves removing the faceplate, often breaking the plastic mounting tabs, but other than that, these are decent cases to work with. It has a Rosewill Capstone 450 watt power supply, in it, which I've had quite good luck with. I have an identical unit running in my main workshop computer with the 6-core AMD FX chip. But anyway, I think I'm rambling on a bit much here. I'm going to start assembling these components and get a CMOS battery for this, and I can't wait to give it a test, so let's see how it all works out. I gotta say, this OptiClean stuff works pretty darn good. It was my first time using it on a CPU to remove the Arctic Silver 5 thermal compound. It's too bad I don't have a macro lens on this new camera, at least not yet, so I can't focus in very close on it. But yeah, it looks pretty darn good. I see one little nick in the heat spreader, but other than that, it looks almost like a new CPU. This is my first time using that Hyper TX3 cooler, and I'm really glad to see that I don't need to have rear access to the motherboard because this uses the existing AMD mounting bracket. And in fact, it's just as easy to work with as the stock AMD cooler for the most part, just with a lot better performance and definitely quieter. I'm probably going to have to move the fan upwards a bit to clear the RAM, but overall it went on there very nice, and I can move on to the next step. Well, I definitely had to move the fan up to clear the RAM, and here's something that really bugs my what I would call mild OCD, where the cooler is like twisted a little bit in relation to the RAM, so it's not perfectly square, and that just bothers me. But unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about it. I don't know if it's the plastic cradle on the motherboard is turned a little bit or what, but gotta live with it, I guess. So far, the install is going pretty well. I ended up sticking most of the unused power supply cabling into that 5 1/4 bay below the optical drive there. Some of you are probably screaming at me for that, but in a case this small, it's not exactly easy to do cable management, and I didn't want to have a giant bundle of wire down here where it needs ventilation, especially going over the video card. So I just had to work with what I had here. The front panel connectors were a lot easier than I expected too. This motherboard had the same pinout as the prior motherboard, so the one-piece connector that went to the front panel actually plugged directly in. Didn't have to change the pinout. Same for the USB. I don't know if you guys remember a lot of the older and or cheaper cases a few years back that the front panel USB had a whole bunch of single pin connectors, and you had to manually adjust the pinout and plug each wire on one at a time. And a lot of times the front panel audio connectors were the same way. I'm really glad I don't see cases like that too much these days, because that was incredibly frustrating, and there was a lot of times where people would get the pinout wrong and burn up their USB devices and or the port on the motherboard. But anyway, so far that's all fit perfectly on there, and I've got two brand new SATA cables installed. It's always nice to have the newer cables with the functioning clips on them so they actually stay put. And at this point, all I got to do is put that ginormous video card in there, and I'm ready to give this thing its first power up. Well, let's see if this thing is going to work. And this time I'm actually going to remember to turn the power supply on first. Let's hope the autofocus on this cheap lens is going to cooperate today as well. I've tried to use manual focus, and it's just not very good with close distance photography, so gotta leave it on auto for now. But anyway, here we go. And right now, nothing. It's not very encouraging. Time to do some troubleshooting. Well, this is not very encouraging. I can hear the relay turn on the power supply when I press the button, but nothing else. So So I know it's actually getting a signal from the motherboard to turn on, but for some reason it is absolutely nothing else happening. I wonder if it's because the the battery was removed from the board. Maybe I need to reset the CMOS. I'm not sure, but I'm going to pull this video card back out so I can do a bit more troubleshooting. Hopefully this isn't anything too serious, like a CPU problem or something like that. It always seems to work this way when I mount everything in a case and get it all hooked up before I bother testing it. It's just my luck. Well, I think I may have discovered the problem. Whenever I disconnect the 4-pin connector for the CPU power, the system turned on fine. And looking at this, there's a choke coil right here, and the pins are quite long, where they extend down from the board. They're not trimmed very short, and I think that pin right there next to the mounting hole is actually grounding out on the standoff in the case. That is because they are rather large cone-shaped standoffs, and it's not agreeing with this board. Another spot where that might be an issue is over here on this USB header, but that doesn't stick down quite as far as that choke coil does. So what I'm going to try to do is trim that pin a little bit and see if that does the job. If not, I'll either have to put spacers on there or modify the standoffs in that case slightly, but hopefully I can make that work. Otherwise I'm just going to have to get a different case. And I hope nothing else is been damaged by that. I know the overload protection in that power supply works really well because I certainly tested that very thoroughly. It didn't even attempt to turn on, so that's some pretty good overload protection. Since it wasn't too big of a deal, I just put everything back in for the next try here. So hopefully my luck is going to fare a little bit better this time, but now let's see what happens. Yeah, that's better so far. Just need to get into the BIOS. Okay, good. Much better. F1 to run setup. Beautiful. Alright. Drives are being detected. So I'm going to go through and set this up, and we'll run memtest 86 first before I install Windows. So far everything is running well. I left the BIOS at the default settings, so the RAM is only running at 1066, even though it's capable of going up to 2000 megahertz, and the motherboard tops out around 1800 if I remember right. But at CAS 7 DDR3 1066, that's probably plenty of performance for what this is. The only time you really need to have more speed on the RAM is if you're using an APU, because it uses the RAM for the video memory a lot of times, and the higher clock speed does help with 3D performance in those cases. But in a system like this, most of you probably know that RAM clock speed really doesn't affect overall system performance too much. It's one of those things that I might turn it up a little bit in the future just because I can, because there's just so much more room to turn the speed up on that RAM. In fact, I think it's rated for CAS 9 at 2000 megahertz, so this RAM is just basically sitting idle at this point. But CPU temp looks good at 29 degrees Celsius, and I see no reason for this to fail the memory test, but I'm going to let it go for a while regardless, and if all is well, then I'm going to proceed with the Windows installation. So I'm glad to see that the fans have throttled down quite a bit after turning on the Q fan control in the BIOS. In fact, I could probably lower that a bit more. I think I had the starting voltage at 6 volts and I could turn it down to 5. And the video card will probably quiet down as well once the drivers are loaded and it's in Windows. And of course, once the side panel's on, I think the system's going to be nice and quiet. It's really not a bad looking case, you know. I wish it didn't have the permanent floppy bay on the front there. There's nothing I can do about it, but other than that, not too bad of a case. Other than that stupid standoff situation, of course. That's the first time I've ever had a motherboard short out on a case standoff. I think the last time I saw that happen was way back when I had a Pentium 1, I think it was a Pentium 133. Not even an MMX, just one of those really old school purple ceramic Pentium chips, and my board grounded out on one of my case standoffs back then. That was the only time I've ever seen that happen on something modern like this. Since everything appeared to be working okay, it passed the MEM test without any trouble. I put the computer back in its normal spot on the bench, and I'm doing a fresh install of Windows 10. So once this is done, I'll see if I can find some software to test this with. At least some 3D benchmarks or something. Gee, thanks Windows, I'm glad you're happy. How about getting on with my installation? Lots of great features to get excited about. That's funny. I've already seen it. One thing that's really bugging me is that case fan in the back of this thing. The bearings are kind of dry, so I really need to replace that fan. Funny thing is, sometimes I think this part here takes longer than the actual installation does. So far it's been moving pretty quickly, even with that crappy SSD that's in there. Still don't really get why Microsoft had to go this route with Windows 10. I mean, are they really trying to cater to the computer unsavvy crowd with this? I'm assuming that's what the deal is. Yes, make it discoverable. Alright. It's still got some stuff left to do. It hasn't installed the video drivers yet, I can already tell. So chances are it's going to start doing that anytime now. In fact, if I just go to updates, check for updates. Now that I've had entirely too much coffee and chocolate, let me give this computer a quick test with, all I got on here right now is Need for Speed High Stakes, which is an ancient game in its own, but nonetheless it's something to do. You can tell how old I am playing games from 1999 like they're new. Of course, this has all modified tracks and cars that we did way back in the day. It's kind of nice to have it reinstalled on a modern computer and have it work.
3, 2, 1, go!
Not used to playing with this camera at all. It's a little bit hard to control. And I think I put a little bit too big of hills in this track. Get out of my way. And you get out of my way. It's like I'm driving to work in the morning. And you get out of my way. Ooh. Yeah. It's a lot more fun when I got somebody to race on the network on here, but I don't have friends over too often these days. Oh, really? God, this game used to have like amazing graphics back in the day. Now it's just so, I don't know, plain. Gotta love the skid marks that just go up in the air because the game can't render hills properly. Oh. Anyway, I think probably good enough for right now. Got some more programs I gotta install on this computer to I'll get everything finished up, and unfortunately when I redid the Windows install on this, I forgot to back up my replays out of that game, so all the replays I did on New Year's weekend when my friend was here just got erased, so I guess we'll just have to make new ones, but that bums me out. Nonetheless, I think that's about all there is to really show with this computer. Everything's working fine so far, and just a few more updates to put on and maybe some tweaks, and it's good to go. I really need to get back on some other projects, so I hope this video was interesting enough to be worth putting on YouTube anyway. I've been really missing the point in time when I was able to make better videos, but I'm kind of in a rush all the time now. But regardless, I will catch you guys in the next project.